Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Thursday session. It is my great honor to welcome everybody here. We're glad that you have come to join us. Before we get started, we would like to know, for those who are joining us, the question is, why are you joining us today? What made you come to our session?
Well, I guess I'll start. The company I work for, this company is going through an agile transformation, and like all of the anti-patterns and symptoms, it's just coming up. So the topic was interesting, and I always get tidbits from folks that are going through the similar things. So hopefully share something and learn something.
Welcome, Chuck. Thank you for coming.
Hello, good evening, everyone. One of the reasons I am here is because of to get more information as relates to we all go through changes and to find out what can I do to embrace change. Because whether we realize it or not, we're always gonna face changes, whether it's in our personal lives, whether it's, on the job, so that's one of the reasons why I'm here to get that information.
Okay, welcome back, Jackie. And Aubrey, you want to give everybody a shout out?
Hi, everyone. Sorry, my camera's not working right now, but I wanted to join this because I just recently got my CSM certification, and I'm also currently a high school teacher. So learning to be flexible just comes with the job and with change, because you're trying to teach 30 to 40 different minds within a classroom, and then 90 minutes later you have 30 to 40 different minds within the classroom and you're trying to teach the same exact lesson. So having to change with all of those various different extenuating circumstances or outside circumstances and being flexible with that, just learning best practices for all of that, but also how I can implement more agile within my career path too.
Well, being a teacher, I can tell you have a lot of more experience with managing people than a lot of people do when they enter this realm. So you have a definitely big advantage there.
Thank you. I'm still trying to figure out how to put that onto my resume though.
Oh, managing difficult people in different situations, that'll be a plus right there. As a teacher, that will literally translate into how you manage and how you get to not only convince, but really relay a message and get a shared understanding. So, but you can reach out to me or Andrea. We can give you some tips. You can even reach out to Padma as well, and she can give you some tips as well. And we're here to help. So feel free to later on during the session, I'll drop in our LinkedIn links so that you can reach out and join us, and we can help out as much as we can.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Ryan, Nicholas, and Diana, welcome. We're asking everybody what brought you here today. Ryan, if you're speaking, you're on mute.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes. What brings me here today is I am an aspiring project manager. So I was looking into the project management committee in the Bahamas. So just curious to find out some new information and meet some new people.
Welcome to the group. Okay, who else wants to come off mute and tell us why you came today to our session? Okay, then let's go ahead and let's get started. Before we get started, we always do a very small invocation. So Andrea, if you will, please.
So Jackie is going to pray for us today.
Lord, we thank you so much for allowing us to come together on this platform so that we can hear information that will impact and change our lives. We pray for our speaker, we pray for this session, and we pray for every person that is on this call tonight. And we ask that you will give us understanding of the topic that is about to be discussed and help us to apply it to our lives. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Jackie. Now, ladies and gentlemen, again, welcome. Good evening. We really hope you like today's topic. This is something that is in any agile transformation or anything in general, change produces resistance. Now, to guide us through this tough time or even this process, we have Padma Putrevu, who will actually be bestowing her knowledge and sharing it with us and hopefully helping each and every one guide us or at least make us see in a much easier way of how to guide through this process. So without further ado, Padma, thank you, and please go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Omar and Andrea, who has now become a friend over the last couple of months. We met, I guess, it's just that I have to make that trip to Bahamas, right? We're working on it. But good evening, everyone. It's wonderful to see you all. And that was a beautiful invocation. I usually pray to my mom. I feel she's my guiding angel. So she's with me in my heart. So yeah, Omar did ask me that, what would I like to be remembered for? So I would be like to remembered for making an impact, today. If you all could even take away one learning out of this, which you can apply at your work immediately, that's a reward in itself. If you want to share it back with me, great. But if not, more success and more power to all of you here. I have learned a lot presenting this topic at my work and also in a few other places. And each time I present this, I learn so much more. So that's a very different way of saying that this is going to be interactive. So please, I'll be having some Menti links and also asking you questions of how you have experienced things. So yeah, please share, because I learn from all of you as much as you're seeking to learn and take away something from this presentation. And with that, I am going to do a very quick tech check and start sharing my screen. And Omar, my friend, if you can just confirm that you can see my screen, and
yes, ma'am.
Wonderful. And I will also get into the slideshow mode, and you can see the slide transition, correct? You saw the slides changing? Yes, ma'am. Wonderful. Okay, all right, we are in business now. Okay, so this topic, I always believe that change is incremental, and with each little step that you take, and with all the resistance that you face, when you look back, you almost feel like that was magic. And so that's like a mantra that I live by: create incremental magic, and embracing resistance is a part of it, right? So a big thank you to Bahamas Agile and Project Management community to give me this opportunity to present. Next thing is, thank you for having this event online where we all can connect from different parts of the world. So thank you for that. And I hope you and your families are doing well. I wish my best wishes to all of you in everything that you're seeking. Some of you have attained certifications recently. Congratulations. And if any one of you is preparing for something, then all the best to you. So I'd like to, as I mentioned, this is going to be interactive, so please don't hold back. And in the chat, if you can post, what roles do you play in your current organization, that would be awesome. Just so that I know my audience better. And this is a little about me. I have about 20 plus years of work experience. And I was thinking about it when someone said that I'm a new project manager, or I'm trying to get into project management. So my career started off as a project manager, and it transitioned into being a Scrum Master and an Agile coach. And when I was looking back at it, I was like, I have 20 years of experience in dealing with resistance. I think that's what I will sum it up as. And so that's also in tune with what the title of my presentation is. In terms of my credentials, I have my MBA, and I'm an IC Agile Expert Coach certified. I hold that certification. If any one of you are interested in knowing more about it, I'm happy to share that. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. But what I really care about is these two, and of course my work. I work with Freddie Mac, but these two logos that you see on the presentation, Ashiana, which was formerly known as ASHA, is an organization which helps victims of domestic violence of South Asian origin. And I have been associated with them for 20 years now. And the other organization which I've been associated with for the last 2+ years now is Lean and Agile, which is an organization for women by women to raise the floor for women, to create a support structure for women to grow. And as a part of that organization, I am their international spiral catalyst, and try to build communities across the world. We have a thriving community in New York, the DMV, DC, Maryland, Virginia area, and then in India, Nepal, Sri Lanka. So in Sri Lanka, we have a very thriving spiral there. And who knows where this will take us. Women all across the world can support each other and raise the floor for each other. So if you are interested in knowing more about LEA, please connect with me via LinkedIn, and I'm happy to share more information. With that, let's move on to the next slide. So the slide sums it up, right? Nothing ever great was achieved without resistance. So why do we get resistance when we are trying to make it better for everybody, right? We need to realize that resistance is like a fundamental human attribute, and change and resistance go hand in hand. And I also wanted to share with you that organizational change is one of the most researched issues in management and leadership. And that's why it just occurred to me when someone mentioned that they're starting off their career as a project manager. I was like, okay, I have 20 years of experience in managing, embracing, learning from resistance, right? And now I think as an Agile coach, I see myself as a change agent. And what I have observed is that change is viewed as necessary because we think that, okay, if we change, it's going to be better for us. It's going to have a positive outcome. But then when resistance shows up in the horizon, we see that as a surprising, oh, where is this coming from? We are sometimes open to change. We are not open to resistance, but we need to realize that resistance and change go hand in hand, right? And as an Agile coach, if I had to sum up agility in one or two words, it would be having an improvement mindset, right? So Agile done well, it's like holding a mirror for us to look at. You don't stand in front of the mirror all the time, you look at the mirror, you make an adjustment, you move on, right? Or you come back to the mirror, make another adjustment, you move on. So if you have to look at agility and resistance together, it's like they go hand in hand. Agile is like a mirror, then resistance is a part of that reality, right? So one message or one takeaway I would like or desire for all of you is that we can be more successful in our efforts to change something if we demonstrate the ability to embrace resistance. And how you demonstrate it is what this presentation is about. Like, how can you embrace resistance? How can you work with resistance? How can you spot the early signs of resistance, right? It's all sometimes easier said than done, but you start with yourself. With that, I'll go to the next slide. So does this look familiar? Right? Everybody wants change, but then when it actually comes to implementing change, it's what you see the resistance emerging when you're trying to implement the change. So something for us to think about. And for me, I have seen this most when running retrospectives. So something for all of you to think about. Okay. I have also observed that if I'm trying to initiate a change, or if I'm supporting a change, and if nothing is happening, I almost get the feeling that I'm being ignored, or if things are status quo, then I'm not doing something right. I'm not getting this right? So when I start seeing opposition, I'm like, okay, good. Now I'm being heard. And then that's when, I start looking for information. And I've noticed that when the defenders of status quo start fighting back, that's when you know that you're on to something. You're probably on the right track, and then you start reading the environment. Okay, so I am going to quickly send you all a Menti survey in the link in the chat, and if you can let me post it in the chat. Give me a moment. Chat box, here you are. Okay, so if you all can click the link and answer the question as to what causes resistance to change, and I'll share the results, and I'll forward this output to all of you because it's created by you, and it's also a good visual for you to look back to for different perspectives of what might cause resistance to change. Are you all able to open the link?
Yeah, yes, Padma, we're able to open it.
Wonderful.
You may have to share it again, Padma.
Yes, I'm sharing the screen. Every time I present and stop presenting, Zoom does its thing on me, and I've never been able to get used to it. I'm going to share. Thank you for your patience. There you go. What causes resistance to change? Fear of the unknown, lack of understanding, not understanding the complete solution, laziness, work overload, comfort with the known, of course.
Padma, are you able to share the Menti link again? I think
Yes.
we had two persons
Okay.
joined after you posted it.
Yeah, I can do that. I can totally do that. Thank you, Andrea. And I'll also share this output because there is always something you can learn by going back to it. Deviate from the original. Learning curves, lack of information, lack of complete information. So, in the future, if you were to ever come back to this output, think about what would you do differently, or like, okay, lack of information, then how can you share information? Think about all of these can lead to an improvement you can make while working with your teams, or while working with the resistance that gets presented to you, right? So fear of the unknown. So how can you make the unknown known? What is it that you know? What is it that you don't know? Who can provide you that information? So these are the questions that you can ask. What is it that you don't know? Who can help? What resources can help? things like that, right? Sometimes people associate change with pain. So then probably the question you need to ask is, what about this change is painful? And what can we do about it as a group, or who can help, right? Okay, there's one more question that I would like to seek input on. And give me a moment, please. And Andrea, can I just email this output to you so that you can share it with, okay, I'll do it post-event, because this is generated by the audience. It belongs to the audience. This is the other link. And the question is, what did you wish for when faced with resistance? And let me share my screen. Zoom, please work with me. There you go. Yes. Shared vision. Okay, so as a change agent, are you able to provide that shared vision? Is something for you to think about. Patient support and additional information. So think about if that is what you want for yourself to be when you faced with resistance. If you can think about, if you want to model the behaviors you want to see in others. So it's like, if you want patience, you have to exhibit patience. So that again ties into the agile principle, model the behaviors you want to see in others. If you want collaboration, for resistance to end, again, what's the information in the resistance that can take you to the end of the resistance? What can you do? What information can you look for in your environment, within the tools that you're using, or with the people that you're working with, people, process, and tools? You know, what information can you look for to make that resistance end? A desire to understand why. Okay, why? What's the premise for this resistance? So 5 why technique, all of you must be familiar with it. That's a very powerful and tried and tested way of looking at getting deeper into the source of resistance. So yeah, again, Andrea, I'll email this output to you, and you can please share it with the audience. Again, think about, okay, if this is what my wish is when I'm faced with resistance, how can I use that to power and model my behaviors to work with my team? Because for all you know, someone within my team may want the same things as me. So start with being self-aware. Okay, I will go back to the presentation. Can you see my presentation screen? Wonderful.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, so those 2 outputs, I will be sending it to you. Okay, so can anybody in the audience speak up, 1 or 2 people, and talk about why does it make sense to embrace resistance? Or you can even post it in the chat, but I'll get to the chat only after the presentation. So 1 or 2 could raise your hand, and Omar or Andrea, you can have them speak up.
Sure.
Hi, this is Diana.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that is fear, is the number one.
Mm-hmm.
and not the knowledge, but many don't like change, period. They like the, and I don't know why there's so many folks that would prefer not to change anything because with change comes growth, education. And sometimes it's also a better method in how our world evolves.
Okay. Anybody else? I can't see all the participants because Zoom does its thing on me. So I'll count on Andrea or Omar to lead that.
So, hi Padma, my name is Alka.
Hi, Alka.
So, yeah, so when you say about embracing a resistance towards a change, first thing it comes in my mind like there is a lack of trust, there is a lack of support within the team, which leads to where there would be little hesitance to accepting the new change. So first thing I would love to build a trust and support which requires for this change and to bring in and making them understanding why we need these changes, why we need this changes for our better empowerment, not just for our project as well as for our personal improvements. Yeah.
Great points. Great points. Yes. Building trust is, I think it's foundational. It's foundational to make lasting changes. So thank you, both of you, for your input. I can summarize a few things that I have learned over the 20 years of experience of dealing with resistance, even internal. Sometimes it's me. It starts with me, sometimes, the resistance. So it tests the commitment of, the people who are working on the change, right? It's like sometimes when you're initiating a change, and if you, at the first sign of resistance, if you back off, then are you really serious about the change? Or whoever is initiating the change, are they really serious about the change, right? It kind of, how committed are you to the change? If you're backing off at the first sign of resistance, how much are you bought into the process, right? That's something that you can explore. Then the other thing is, sometimes it can be valid based on valid viewpoints. So it's like, how do you explore those viewpoints, right? It's like there might be some grain of truth in that resistance, so you need to take into account that grain of truth. So something for you to understand from the there's value in the resistance perspective. There is information there, right? The third thing is resistance can weed out bad ideas. Sometimes if they're not thoroughly vetted, then resistance is a good thing, because there might be flaws in the change that you're trying to make. So it can weed out bad ideas. It can sometimes, when you see resistance and there is resistance to a change that you're making, it can actually help buy time for people to adjust to post-change reality, right? Like if you're trying to implement a new tool or something, then probably one way is to do a pilot before you roll it out to the enterprise, or try to use a free version or something like that before you spend the money, depending on whether or not you're working for a large or a small organization. And then sometimes you probably have to put the necessary infrastructure and systems needed to support the post-change, like the new way of working or something. So resistance sometimes helps you buy time, right? So you can see it as a good thing. And I have found myself several times in situations where we are either trying to use a new tool, and again, every organization has its own unique needs, and one tool may not do the job. Or we were trying to use a collaboration tool in one of my previous employers, and it was only one person in each team would get access to it. So it ended up that the person who has access to the tool would almost become like a note taker, and it was not collaboration where everyone can put their ideas. It was like people were typing the ideas, and you had to copy paste it into this tool so that everyone could see. It created extra work, and finally finally we had to not, and then realize that it also had a security vulnerability. It was not ideal. So you know what? Thankfully, we only bought 150 licenses. We were able to abort, cut our losses and move. So, and when people saw the tool, it's a great tool, but not everyone can use it. Then why even have it, right? So there is value in that. It helps buy time to adjust to post-change reality. So we realize that we need a tool which doesn't have any security vulnerabilities, and then it's cheaper so that we can extend it to the whole organization. Some things for you to think about, and these are my personal examples, right? And then finally, it provides an outlet for people's emotions and energies, because sometimes if you are not able to create a space for dialogue to happen, then the resistance just keeps building up, and you probably will have a verbal explosion or an explosion of emotions, right? So creating that space to discuss the resistance and to find that information that you have to work with to embrace that resistance is very important. So now all of this makes sense. How do you do this, right? Before that, how have any of you reacted to change? Can anybody share anything that you would like to? If not, I can.
I think the verbal explosions have predominate, dependent on situations and the different types of characters that you're dealing with. That's something I have seen a lot. The fear of the unknown, and specifically the bad ideas. The bad ideas are many. Given the change, many assumptions are made, and so it's something that you see, and you already have challenges against it, because it's an assumption that spread like wildfire. So you have to nip it in the bud.
Very true. Very true. I think I find myself in this situation sometimes a lot. Like, you're working with square wheels, but the round wheel will get you to a place faster. But you're so busy buried into the weeds of doing of the status quo that you fail to see that adapting to this change is actually good for you, like someone else mentioned earlier, right? So look at your ecosystem, and our general attitude is always like, make the resistance to go away. But if we just have to change it to say, okay, how can I work with what's being presented to me, right? That's a perspective that you can adapt. And I personally like to do things on a whiteboard. It has helped me immensely. And I start off with what assumptions I'm making and what biases do I have when it comes to something, important decisions that I need to make, so that at least I am clear about the assumptions. And I'll talk about assumptions in the upcoming slides, but that's something which I always try to write down, because once the change happens, there is a way to go back and validate if my assumptions helped me or they were assumptions, right? So something for you to think about. All right, so where do you start? Once again, we talk about, instead of asking, how do I make this resistance go away? Or how do I deal with this? Or how do I avoid it? You can create an opportunity for dialogue, and you can talk about, how do I embrace resistance? What reasons can I take into account? Because one thing I've also noticed that if you do not create a space for dialogue, even the best high-performing teams need psychological safety to be innovative. So if you're not creating that space as a change agent, as an agile coach, as a project manager, as someone who is working with many people to drive value, to deliver value, you're probably thwarting innovation within your team, because if you're not creating a space for a healthy conflict or an avenue for dealing with all of this, you are probably keeping your team from attaining higher levels of agility through psychological safety, through high levels of agile maturity, and through innovation. And innovation does require a lot of, if you're doing something solo, that's a different story. But if you are trying to innovate, you usually have to work with a group of people, cross-functional teams, and you know, even within your team may know you, but if you're working with someone for the first time, then a lot of resistance can get presented to you. So creating that room for dialogue is very important. So how do you start with you, right? Think about how, pause and prepare, right? I mentioned to you, like, I write down assumptions, I write down my biases too for certain things, right? It helps me be more self-aware. But when resistance is presented to you, pause and prepare to deal with the resistance, right? Think about whether your flight or fight mode is kicking in, and how does it feel? What's your first reaction, right? Do you want to fight back? Or do you want to make your point? You have a group of people on Zoom where nobody's sharing that they're having their camera on or something, and you're trying to get a word in, people are speaking over each other. But think about all those situations that get presented to you, and what are your cues? Read the environment, pause before you act, right? It's okay to ask for time. If you do not have enough time to reflect, ask for the time. Don't respond in haste, right? Because sometimes if you respond in haste, it might be less than ideal, and you might think, okay, I should have said this. So try to pause and ask for that time, and see how you can better prepare for the resistance that is being presented to you, right? It's also a way to be more present, and then you might actually be well prepared for resistance when it gets presented another time, because now you're self-aware of it. So creating that self-awareness for yourself of how you react to resistance is important. This is like a very I look at this a lot when I'm working with teams, when I'm working with myself, about how people react to change, right? How the whole emotional process of contemplating and transitioning through any kind of change can be. And I've found myself in this whole graph. I've found myself in neutral zone. I've found myself listless. And of course, and then once things come back to normalcy, or once I fully understand the change, I come back to my high energy, and there is excitement. And where I have noticed this for myself is when there is a reorg or when there is a manager change. So who doesn't like status quo, right? But when there is a change, it is a part of your reality. You sometimes don't have full control about what's happening. So what is your individual change cycle? Think about that. And then what information when presented to you can help you deal with this better? More information. Okay. So if that's your expectation, who can help you? What resources can help you? What is making this difficult for yourself? And then you could also use this to take your teams through a good transition with change as a change agent, because you're working at the smallest unit of a organization, right, within your agile teams. Okay, again, powerful questions, right? With all of those which came up in that first Menti slide, like what powerful questions can you ask to understand the basis of resistance? So can I hear from the audience, what questions have you asked in the past which have helped you navigate resistance within your teams? If anybody wants to unmute and share.
I'll do it, Diana. I like to just ask what the objection is.
Okay.
That starts the conversation if they're eager to even speak.
Okay.
But I am here in a safe place and I tell them objections is this is the time to tell me and
Mm-hmm.
how can we work through it as a team.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you. Anybody else?
So hi, this is Alka again.
Mm-hmm.
So at my organization, so there was a big change. So we were using a ConnectWise for our project management, which I introduced Jira into our team
Mm-hmm.
to getting into a better, observation towards projects.
Mm-hmm.
So I was working with 20 plus years experienced managers and everyone, and explaining them that exactly why this change was required was very difficult. They don't, sometimes they are a bit egoistic, like why you need this change, why do you want you to spend so much more investing upon this, why do you want to shut down this ongoing process, why do you want to create a new process,
Mm-hmm.
kind of that situation. So when I've been I've been as a Scrum Master, it's been just 2.5 years. So I had to play with them a small game. So I got wooden toys, which just
Mm-hmm.
normal kids have it. So I stacked up in a straight line, and then I told that, how do you want to build a castle on it?
Okay.
How important you can do it. So then we said that if you change from this position to putting it up on the top and design it into a better way, then we can change it.
Mm-hmm.
And unless we would not be able to prepare a castle. So
Mm-hmm.
explaining them, saying that using an old methodology or outdated products would not take our cycle much faster,
Mm-hmm.
rather than using a powerful tool which would help us to do most of our stuff as an automated, rather than
Mm-hmm.
using those time on that, I would use it on a productive reasons. So this was something to explain them. A small toy helped me to do it. But yeah,
Wonderful.
this was a good change which I brought into our organization.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing. Um, something that I can that has worked for me is to talk about what does this change mean for each person in the team, right? And I have found, especially when we're trying to introduce estimation techniques and story point techniques for brand new teams and all of that. So, like, within a team, having good estimation techniques are important because it helps you estimate better, it helps you deliver. But for someone, what would this change mean for someone who's one layer removed from our team, right? Because if it's a stakeholder, they probably care about the value of whatever product you're releasing, whatever feature you're releasing. Honestly, they probably are least concerned about how you're estimating. It's like, how do you make, they're more interested in predictability and the value that's being delivered. So whenever you're introducing a change within a team, it's like, what does the change mean to each person in the team? What could the change mean to to someone who's one layer removed from your team? That is something I have found helpful. And if I'm out of ideas, one question that has always helped me is, what would be helpful? Just that one short question of 4 words, what would be helpful, can can invoke a lot of ideas, a lot of dialogue. For me, creating that space for dialogue has always been a way to work through resistance. So that's and it also helps build trust with the team, right? Because when you're creating that space for dialogue, and instead of dictating what the team should or should not do, you get champions, you get buy-in to the change that you're making. The resistance is slowly erased, and then once again, it helps you build trust with your team because the team is feeling heard. So something for you to think about when you're dealing with resistance, or your work, when resistance get presented to you in situations day in and day out. How do you gather data, right? You're looking at resistance. How do you gather data? The data could be through observations, It could be through surveys, it could be through questions, it could be through a simple show of hands, like anybody who who feels that this change will fail or whatever. It could be a simple show of hands to a question. You could use dot voting, and then you could get into something more complex like affinity mapping and design thinking and all of that. But there are a myriad of ways to gather data. So depending on the type of situation that is being presented to you, use some techniques to gather data, because again, if you do not gather data, it is difficult to understand or put yourself in the shoes of the person who's resisting the change, right? Like, what is that person going through? What is their situation? What is his goal? You can basically say, what will be helpful? What's your ideal? How can this be successful? What does success look like? Right? These are all questions you can ask, or even through surveys, to gather information. It's like, how do you exhibit curiosity? These are all the ways. Don't get into this thing of, will this work or not? It's like courteous curiosity, because you don't always know the other person's perspective unless you create that space for a safe dialogue. So that's, again, very important. How can you invite a view into the future, right? Some of you talked about it. It also showed up in the mentee survey, right? How can you invite a view into the future? How can you talk about success stories, past successes, and say that, okay, I've seen this work elsewhere. These are the challenges we overcame, and this succeeded, and this helped to solve for all these problems. You can share some success stories. You can have, and for if there are any product owners in this group, when you're developing a vision, having a vision came up in one of the mentee surveys, right? An input provided by one of you here, that you need a vision. So how do you create that vision? A postcard from the future is a great exercise. You can write, you can work with the team. And from my past, I was working with a team, brand new team again, and I was like, one question I asked that team is, what does a dream team look like? Okay, and how can we become a dream team? And then the input that came from that drove the working agreements for the team. And then of course we would have regular retrospectives to improve and all of that. But that one question of, what does a dream team look like, it helped gather inputs from everyone in a very non-invasive way. Okay, what does a dream team look like for me? A team that communicates really well. Okay, great. How can we make that communication happen? These are all the avenues, right? Then we looked into, okay, great, these are all avenues. Everybody needs to speak up, but not everybody speaks up. So how are we going to get input from people who don't speak up, right? So anonymity can be very helpful. So how do we gather input anonymously? So these are all some ways, like invite a view into the future. And in fact, one input that came from the dream team is, and some of these were team members who were moving from other teams who did not have good laptops. So it came up in that session saying, having good laptops that don't crash all the time, right? And so we managed to, I told them that, set up a meeting with me and let me know, and it's all confidential. And then we did get new laptops for those 2 or 3 employees whose laptops were crashing all the time. So you never know what will come up, right? So creating that space to get the information is very important. Some of you may be familiar with the Carter 8-step change model. There's a lot of literature out there, so I'm not going to talk about it, but something for you to explore. What I would like to talk about is how you can create that space, because you've heard me say that create space for dialogue. But how do you create that space for dialogue? How do you, as a change agent, look for that dialogue? Right? So something, and again, I can share the link with you. There's a lot of literature about looking at stuck patterns in team communication. But when you're in a team and there is dialogue happening, team members are talking, it's like you look at the four models, right? The four move. One is a move. When someone is making a move, then are the others following, opposing, or are they neutral, right? So when you see to start reading a room using that technique, you can see who the informal leaders are within a team, and then you probably can get their buy-in first, because sometimes when the informal leaders buy-in into something, there is more easier buy-in from the rest of the team. So that's one thing. The second thing is, when you are seeing when you're making a move, or if someone within the team is making a move for a change, and if you have followers and opposers, and then you have the serial opposers, you as a neutral change agent, what questions can you ask to get more information, so that when a move is made, you have more followers than opposers? So something for you to think about. So next time, I try to practice this when I look at LinkedIn comments, right? When someone posts something controversial, and you look at all the comments that are made, I try to classify them as move, oppose, bystand, to practice my skill on how to read what is reading the room. Because sometimes, and we are all working virtually, sometimes you're just waiting for the other person to finish before you can make your point. But again, think about, when you're making your point, are you opposing, are you following, or are you being neutral? And who is making the move? What is their stake to be able to support a change? What's in it for them? Try to understand that. But this is something you can also look at on how to look at the communication which is happening within your teams. Agreeing on the objective, when you have resistance can lead to alignment if you are embracing the resistance. So having that bidirectional agreement and bidirectional empathy to find that common ground is also important, to be able to embrace resistance and to get a shared understanding and create that win-win for all. And then you co-create experiments, because you start small, you take those tiny risks, make those tiny iterations. Typically in retrospectives, what I look at is, when someone brings in an improvement idea, I always ask the question, what will tell us that we have achieved this? What are the indicators, right? So that you're in a position to create a small experiment or try it for, we recently introduced a new method within the team to report incidents and on-call support. And then, so I was like, okay, for how long do you want to try this before it tells you, we know that this option is working for us? And then the team said, we want to try it for a month. So I'm like, okay, then when do we want to do a check-in to see whether this process is working for us or not? Because typically the on-call rotation changes every week. It's Tuesday 11 a.m. to the next week's Tuesday 11 a.m. And the current support model was not working. So we had to introduce something new. And so I'm like, okay, what does success look like? And based on that, we came up with options. We did a survey. And then, okay, when do you want to do the checkpoint? How long do you want to try this? And when do you want to check in to see that this is working for us, or what tweaks do we need to make, right? Another example I can quote is, one of our leaders came up to our team and said that one goal that I would like to see is 0 production defects, right? Now, how do you get to that? Which means that we should not have more than 2 defects in the UAT environment, which means UAT is like external to our team. Okay, now how do we get, so for an external team to not find more than 2 defects, what changes do we need to make? Okay, so then what automation, how much of our code has automation testing, how much of it is not automated, where we are still doing manual targeted testing. We had to go and look back at all those processes to make those changes. By the end of the PI, we were able to get to 0 defects in production. Now just think about the impact, right? Like, what does it mean for the leader? It means for the leader a stable product, right? What does it mean for the customer? A reliable product. What does it mean for the team? A satisfied customer. So think about what this change means for within the team and for people outside your team. And how can you make this happen, right? So in a nutshell, how do you embrace resistance in the workplace? Understand the basis of resistance, ask powerful questions, identify the important informal leaders and get their buy-in, explore patterns of communication, right? Move, oppose, bystand, follow, right? Exhibit curiosity, because, courteous curiosity, how is this helpful? How can I be of help? How can I make this better for everyone? How can we make this better for each other collectively? Invite a view into the future, learn from your challenges. It's very easy to get bogged down in the present. So it's important to learn from your challenges. It's important to look at a view of the future. So now I would like to ask the audience, and I hope more people can speak up, what would you do differently when faced with resistance? And I'll stop sharing. Jackie, you're on mute.
No, I was just going over in my head and I said, that's a really good question. Like, what would you do? I think for me, it would definitely be communication is so important, and being able to kind of appreciate, I don't know if that's the right word, appreciate those who oppose, or to be able to understand their opposition a lot better.
I love this. I'm writing it down. Appreciate the resistance. I love that. I'm writing it down.
And to have respect for their point of view. Because of course, and I like the chart that you had in terms of identifying and recognizing, okay, what change is going on with me and where am I at in that cycle of change. And so for me, that would be the communication and understanding the other person who opposes you.
Thank you. Anybody else? I mean, that's pretty much the end of my presentation. My next slide was resources, and I'll send the slide and the Menti outputs to you, Andrea, for distribution to the audience. But the last slide was resources. Anybody else? Any questions?
Sure, I have a quick question. What would you do different if you're trying to elicit change at a leadership level, like above you? You're not the team leader, but you're trying to influence change higher than you at the leadership level. What would you do different than the great stuff you already outlined? You should see my notes.
Yes, I will. And I'll also download the chat. Again, look for information. If you are trying to influence at a higher level, for me, obviously, that doubt yourself and that OUT struck off, that part, I try to follow that. It's like, what information can help me do a better job in informing the leaders, right? Or ask them that what's their ideal, what is their desired outcome from a given change, or how can I share some success stories of places where I have tried to introduce a given change and how it has worked for me. all of that may help. But again, you do need to prepare for those meetings, because there is that human aspect of everyone is different, right? So what's in it for them? Look at all of that. But again, see that, and when you go with all your preparation, and if you see that move and oppose and follow, look for those cues.
Okay.
And then adjust. Not easy, but
No.
preparation is key.
Yeah, first you got to kind of get over the doubt and the imposter syndrome. How am I going to go speak to these executives about, business process or business agility? I mean, they're C-level. It's like preaching to the choir, and they're actually not even listening because they have in their minds what they want. But your idea and your suggestion to literally write down your own biases and understand yourself and gather the information to meet them where they are and understand what it is they're going to get out of it. That's where I think I need to pivot. And you don't want to prepare too much, because then you're stuck and then the nerves kick in, but I've been kind of dealing with this, which is why this meetup was very, very interesting to me. And I try to have elevator conversations every time I catch somebody in the hall, in the elevator, walking between buildings. I just try to keep the conversation moving and keep it in the front of their minds.
Awesome. Thank you. I took something from that. So thank you. And something that I do is I try to talk to my mentors as a way of preparing. I try to sometimes do a role play with my mentors, like as if they are the leaders and I'm presenting to them. And one thing is always, what is it that I want out of that meeting? How am I going to prepare for it? So if I'm getting buy-in from a leader is something that I want from that leader, from that meeting, how am I going to prepare for it? What does buy-in look like? And then one more thing, which one of my mentors told me, is stump questions. How do I prepare for stump questions? What would make me falter? I would write down those questions and prepare for the answers ahead of time. As far as possible. That does not mean that I'm fully prepared. I have been in situations where a leader asks me a question and I don't have an answer. But these are some things that I use to prepare. Like, what can cause you to fail? What questions can cause me to fail? And so those are the stump questions. Why would this not work? Or what would cause this to not work? Then how am I going to prepare for it?
Especially if you have, like I said, leadership people who have done this before, and they say, "Oh, I've tried that before and it didn't work." How do you change their minds? How do you let them know, especially if you're trying to move to an agile way of working, that every company is different, every community, every culture is different, and that you have to try everywhere you go. You have to release the past.
Very true. Very true. And so one question that's coming to my mind is when someone tells you that it doesn't work or it did not work in my past, what about that failure? What was considered failure? Because that's that person's version, right? That it failed or it did not work. So what about it did not work? There's information there, right? If that person shares it and they're gracious enough to share, or like they can even say, I don't have to share that with you. And then, that can happen too. But
if I got them in the room, hopefully they're willing to share.
Yes. So it's like,
that's a great point.
Yeah.
How can we learn from your past failure? And
exactly.
Great point. Thank you.
Thank you. I learned something too. So thank you. Lana, it's wonderful to see you from
Hi, Padma. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you?
Good, good. I was waiting patiently to speak because you guys were having a really, really great conversation. I was going to say something that has helped me in the past with my team is that I have tried to do some research for myself ahead of time. In my case, I'm a senior project manager, so I'm not really doing the Scrum, doing the process that you guys are doing. But sometimes it could be something as simple as a new application, right? And usually we would know ahead of time. So what I would do is just do some research on my own, either with the person that sent out the notice, because sometimes when they sent it out, they're working on it. So I just get some extra information. And then usually what I would do is just have, like, let's say we have a team meeting, just quickly mention it. Oh, this software, et cetera, is coming up. And then if there are issues, I tell them, well, just let me know. We can have a quick meeting separately just to get feedback, right? I just tell them it's a feedback, positive or negative. Just give me 2 comments at the most, and that's it, right? And then I just take that and I sort of go through it, see what I separate it into what was negative, what was positive, what were they looking for, what would they like to change. And we sort of have like this little, and I usually, every now and then I might have to reach out to someone just to get a little bit of elaboration, but at least for me, sometimes for me personally, I really don't like to see my team struggling or having an issue with something. So sometimes I just start out that way, and I tell them just limit, very brief, just 1 sentence maybe, but two different comments. Just let me know, what do you think? It could be 2 negative ones, 2 positive ones, one of each, but just to let me know how it's going. And then we just sort of go from there. And then if, let's say, my manager comes to me and asks me for feedback, at least I have some feedback that I can present, right? And I try not to make it such a big deal. And also too, I try to be neutral too, because I don't want them to think, because I'm doing research ahead of time, that this is something I'm putting my stamp on and approving it, right? I just want it to be somewhat neutral, because I want their feedback and their input. And so far, it has been working for me. I mean, sometimes the stuff that comes out, the application may not be the best, but we find ways of working around it. And I definitely make sure that my team provides feedback to the person that's in charge. So at least I don't want them to feel, okay, you're struggling with it, but no one cares, right? So I try to move that feedback up the chain. I mean, sometimes, you know, maybe sometimes in some cases they brought out a new version, right? And they fix stuff. So it depends. But like I said, I try to do the little bit of research on my own beforehand, before it actually gets rolled out. Because I think too, it helps my team feel more comfortable, because I think they feel like someone is looking out for them. So that's just my little 5 cents.
Beautiful. Yeah, doing your research is important, because like I said earlier, if at the first sign of resistance, if you back off, then which means you're not bought into it. So doing your research helps you prepare to present this to someone who's probably opposer, a serial opposer. Right. So preparation is key. Anybody else? Yeah, go ahead.
Before we continue, could everybody please indulge me and turn on their cameras real quick so I can take a brief picture so we can post this on LinkedIn?
Totally.
Of course you want a camera at 7 o'clock at night. Gosh.
I'm so glad to see you, Victoria. It's been a while. Okay, guys, I will be very quick about this. Thank you all for turning on your cameras. And all smile. 1, 2, and 3. Thank you very much, everyone. Let me take another one real quick. I saw that Diana turned on her camera last minute. Let me go again. And again, 1, 2, and 3. Thank you very much. And I will not interrupt the question session. Please proceed.
Anybody else, questions or share? We are all here to learn from each other. So share.
Can I share?
Please.
In the beginning of this, I know everyone was kind of introducing themselves and giving a little background. I am in the transitional area right now, unemployed, but going from 15 plus years in marketing and operations to a Scrum Master now for the past 2 years. Noticing that the challenges are that they're looking for experience as a Scrum Master title, although I have so many transferable skills from everything, all the other jobs that I've done with so many different industries under my belt, from, you know, marketing agencies to the radio broadcasting world to the fast food restaurant business as a franchisee. And I'd like to go more into the Scrum Master role, but I am really challenged with some obstacles, and that is the Scrum Master title or role within the organization. So I wanted to kind of hear from anyone that maybe have just become Scrum Masters just shortly, I don't know, in the last few couple of years. How did you get into a Scrum Master role per se,
Well,
without the experience under your belt, because they don't see it as a Scrum Master role?
Okay, I'll give you a couple of answers to real quick. I got to a Scrum Master role because the startup where I was working on gave me the opportunity. The Scrum Master who was operating at that moment,
Yes.
I learned the skill set aside, and I was working as a PO, so there was a couple of things that I did, but most and foremost, I got the opportunity within the startup itself. What I can tell you on your resume is read the Scrum Master requirements that each company has. You're going to see that it could vary from company to company, but there are certain skill sets that will be needed across the board. It doesn't really matter what you see or whatnot. Certifications, they're needed. I would say if you're a Scrum Master role, the most search ones are the SSM, which is the one for Scaled Agile Framework, and the CSM, which is the one from Scrum Alliance. The
one I have.
Yeah, the other's good to have, I would say, is the PSM, which is the Professional Scrum Master from scrum.org. And then it can't hurt to have another framework. You could either use Scrum at Scale or Large Scale Scrum, which pretty much is, again, scaling frameworks based on Scrum, but you're going to have to probably look within organizations or even communities of practice like this one to see if they have any projects that you can practice as a Scrum Master. You're not the first person to bring this up. Companies are very strict, and the reason why they are is because they want people to handle or be able to handle different experiences. Now, granted, and you're absolutely right, there are many things that are transferable. Aubrey brought something, she's a teacher. I mean, 90% of a Scrum Master's job is managing people and how you manage and you can communicate with people and solve impediments. So you have to see how you can spruce up your resume to translate that so that they can understand it. But another thing is look for headhunters. They can help you and maybe get you companies that could consider you. If you do it on your own, and systems will probably just discard you immediately. Correct. Because you might not have some keywords. Correct. And I could probably go on about this a little bit more because I am myself am searching, and I can give you more details. So please hit me up on LinkedIn. I will gladly have a private session with you, and I could give you more recommendations on what to do and how to potentially land a Scrum Master role.
Wonderful. Thank you, Omar.
No problem.
That's awesome. So Diana, what works for me, or what has for me, honestly, I was operating in the role of a Scrum Master for a very long time before I actually got the title. So by the time the title actually came, I had a couple of years being a Scrum Master. Having said that, I also had to leave my organization and come back to get that role. So sometimes this is from several jobs back. So sometimes, different strokes for different folks. What works for one person doesn't work for the other. But what I can definitely recommend is, like Omar mentioned, go through a couple of Scrum Master job descriptions out there. If you already have a Scrum Master certification, great, because then once you're in the role, you can embellish with other certifications. But what I would do is I would look at all these job descriptions and then map it to my own experience, where I can talk about problem solving. Because like Omar said, when you attend interviews, all these skills of working with people, working with diverse ideas, influencing without authority, those are the questions that will get you'll get asked. And then of course, as a Scrum Master, you're also expected to understand the process, right? The 4 ceremonies, the sprint planning, the daily stand-up, and the outcomes for each of it, the purpose for it, and how would you deal with a difficult PO. And that's where your transferable skills come into play. Or how do you deal with a team member who is a serial opposer, right? So these are the places where your transferable skills of working with difficult people, or your ability to solve for problems, will come into play. So look at all these job descriptions and see what of that job description that you already have, and highlight that on your resume. And of course, I will not diminish the value of certifications. It also demonstrates that you're a lifelong learner. So if you have any certifications, do highlight them on your resume. And even I don't have all the certifications which Omar mentioned, and I'm like, oh my God, there are so many out there.
Yes.
But
Okay,
yeah,
wonderful. Thank you.
build your roadmap for certifications, but at least one thing after the other. Have some basic certifications to get an entry into the.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Something, and I'll add this, something that Padma mentioned, and I know where she was going to that. There are people, and I can tell you this because I had an interview with somebody who said she doesn't care about certifications. They mean nothing to her, because the real key is actual experience, and that you can really do the job. So to get through the door, meaning to probably get in front of HR, you might want to have them. But when you're actually doing, or when you're going to meet with people who are the higher ups, your managers, your potential VPs, they could care less about the certifications. They just want to know that you know how to do the job and that you can do it well.
Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
So if I could chime in on what both Padma and Omar said, it's good to have the certifications, but there, like you will have some persons who will not care about the certifications. So what they do care about is your experience. And with not having the work experience, you can get experience through volunteering. So volunteering has a lot of merit, and it shows that you have the experience with the work, not necessarily paid work, but you have experience. And so for me, I obtained my CSM Certified Scrum Master certification, but I've not gotten a job as a Scrum Master as yet. But I've been on a team volunteering where I have helped develop an app. So I have that experience. I have a product that's in a store that persons can go and use, but it was not through paid work. So I can put that on my resume and they can see, okay, she hasn't been working as a Scrum Master, but here it is. I can bring up on my phone when I go in the interview, and I can show them the app, and I can bring up the page that has my name on it as a contributor, as part of the team that built the app. So I would recommend for you, Diana, to seek out opportunities within various communities that have those opportunities where you can volunteer your time and learn and get that experience as a Scrum Master to put on your resume.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much, Andrea.
I was going to say the same thing too, Andrea. Excellent idea, because before I had landed, I actually signed up with Taproot and Catch a Fire, and they had a lot of large organizations that was just looking for nonprofit philanthropic work for just like a couple of hours a week. It was like Disney and a bunch of other companies, and they were looking for project managers. I saw a couple of Scrum Masters, but this was a couple of years ago, but it was more project managers. But those are two organizations that I know that other people had recommended to me. Again, is Taproot and Catchafire, CATCHAFIRE. And they are two organizations where you go in and you volunteer, you put down the skills that you have, and they try to match you with the projects. And obviously you choose what you want, but I was just going to say that. And that was one way that I was going to try to get experience before I became a true project manager. Because even though I had the certification, like you guys are saying with the Scrum Master, had the PMP, I didn't have the traditional background that a lot of companies were looking for. And I mean, it just so happened that I landed, but like I said, I was going to work on a bunch of projects. I had a bunch of projects lined up to work on to get that experience, but I ended up getting the job. But yeah, I think what Andrew said is absolutely true. Volunteering, and it's not like you need a ton of hours. You can work on different projects, and the ones that I chose, they were just looking for like 2 hours a week, which I'm sure you should be able to manage. But like I said, it's a wonderful idea, and you give back to the community too.
Right. Catch a Fire, and the other one was what?
Taproot. Yeah,
Taproot.
TAPROOT. Yeah, you can Google both of them, and I'm sure there are others like them, but those are the two major ones that I had signed up with.
Wonderful.
There you
Oh
go.
my gosh, this is great information. I really appreciate it.
Beautiful.
I have a question for Padma.
Go ahead.
Omar wants to close our session, right? Well,
I was actually going to
9 more
say
minutes.
that we have time. We still have time, so please make your questions.
We have 9 more minutes, so let me get my question out. Padma, what advice would you give a leader who has not only serial opposers on the team, but also crickets?
Okay. Wow. So you're giving the leader advice on how he or she can deal with these.
Yes, the serial opposers and then the crickets. And when I say crickets, that means the persons who are on the team that always come, but they're silent. They don't have no opinion about anything. Then they're not left and they're not right. They're just silent.
Mm-hmm.
So how would you advise a leader to deal with a team like that?
You know, how can we collect information? There is value in anonymity. So if these people are not speaking up, what is one way we can get their input? And so that's one thing. I mean, there are multiple ways to get information to make it safe for these silent people who don't say yes or no, or they're like neutral about everything, right? They're like the air, they're just present. Right? That's something, how to get their input. What would make it safe for them to find out? So that's one thing I can recommend. But with serial opposers, again, there is information in that opposition, right? So when the leader is making a move and then the opposers are speaking up with their oppositions, what questions can the leader ask to get more information? It's like, tell me more. What would make this better for you? What does success look like? What's your ideal situation? Things like that, to get the opposers to speak in a way where they're not threatened, and ask questions. It's like this, right? Okay, I can use my own example. This is not any leadership challenge, but I had a spine surgery in 2012, right? It's right in the middle of my neck. Okay. I drove the surgeon crazy. Let me just tell you that. It's like, And I was a project manager then, didn't even have my Scrum Master certification. I had my certification, but I was not working in that role. I'm like, will you touch my voice box? Because I make money by speaking. I am a project manager. And, okay, how many of your patients have not lost their voice after doing their surgery? Okay. And he said, I have performed 250 surgeries, but only 2 patients for 3 months. And I also sing. So I'm like, I cannot lose my voice, right? I cannot. So I was like the serial opposer, and as bad as it can get. And I went back to the doctor several times to ask all these questions before I finally said yes to the surgery. And and the doctor finally was like, when he came to see me post-surgery to do the rounds, and he's like, okay, sing a Bollywood song. I've never asked any of my patients to sing that. But I drove him that crazy before I had the surgery that, but I asked him all these questions, and he very patiently answered all of those, gave me examples so that I could trust him to cut my neck open. So
makes sense.
Yeah, I can only, I've had a lot of these situations in my current team. I do have even sometimes even the followers can become opposers based on what's in it for them. So,
Padma just hit a sore spot just now. You heard what she said, Omar? What's in it for them?
Oh,
Like,
yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it's you have to exhibit courteous curiosity.
I love that one. Courteous curiosity. That's powerful, Padma. And I love how you use incremental magic. Like that makes me think of a wave, like how a wave flows. It doesn't come, no, some waves do come crashing all at once. Like I had an experience where I almost drowned when a big freak wave just came and swallowed us up. But anyway, that's a long story. So the incremental magic thing makes me feel like you just one step at a time. Like even with careers, we try to do so much one time, but we don't understand it's incremental. You have to take it slow. You have to have your roadmap. You have to plan these stuff out. So like the persons in our session that they asked about their careers, how they could get opportunities. It's just have a map, have a plan, and then achieve those goals incrementally. Don't look at the long-term picture, like what you want to accomplish in the long term. Just do the next step, the next right thing to do, and you'll see the incremental magic folding. I'm not supposed to be closing. That wasn't a close, Omar.
But that was great. Thank you, Andrea. Thank you.
Well, since Andrea closed it, good night. No, we have 2 minutes left, so we have one more question. Or Padma, if you have any closing remarks, the floor is yours.
Oh, wow. Thank you. I must just say thank you. I feel like I'm myself walking away with so much to think about and ponder over. And, with all the questions that you asked, with all the situations that you presented, and like, what would you do? I have to introspect that if I'm presented with this situation, how am I going to prepare differently based on what I have learned today? So thank you. I look forward to the recording, and I will send the presentation to Omar and Andrea, and also the output of the mentee, because all those questions and the answers, and thank you, lovely audience, because that is going to become a visual, like what are all the ways, resistance, and what do you want when you're faced with resistance? It's like, for it to go away or more information, it's like it can help me model behaviors that I probably want to see in others, or look for cues like, okay, this is probably what my team wants. How can I, or the people I'm working with want? So how can I make that information available for them? How can I model the behaviors that I want to see in them? So that's what I'm taking away from that input. So I'll forward that to both of you.
Thank you, Padma. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for joining us. We normally present every last Thursday of each month. If you're interested in being one of our speakers, please reach out to any of us. We gladly will receive anybody. We do touch both on Agile and project management topics and everything else in between. So please feel free to reach out. Anything that you can do or anything else that you want to know about us, feel free to reach out. We'll gladly answer any questions that you may have. I'm going to go ahead and post again the LinkedIn profiles so that you can reach out to any of us, Andrea, myself, or even Padma. So thank you again for coming. We hope you enjoy this. Please spread the word. We want to grow our community a little bit further. And any additional people that you can send our way, we'll highly appreciate it. So again, thank you very much. Have a good night. And Padma, thank you for sharing your knowledge with us.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Good night, everyone. Thank you so much.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you, Padma.
Thank you.
Good night. Good night.
Great session.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.